Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me in the quest to know true historic background of the historical timeline of the Hebrew patriarchs that occupied the various lands of the Middle East. There's a lot of confusion about who are the Hebrew patriarchs, who are the Jews. So I just want to clarify to us today that there is a distinct purpose in both races, and we want to know what is that distinct, what is the distinct purpose of each race. Today's heading for our discussion is the false Jews, the Edomites, and the European converts. Yes, well, we know that there are false Jews. We know that there is a distinct race of people that propose to call themselves of the actual Hebrew heritage. So you want to know exactly where did the Hebrew culture come from? We've been told in Scripture that the nation of Israel would lose its identity for its disobedience, and its identity would cease among men. That's found in Deuteronomy chapter 32. That's the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 32. And we know that it was at this particular time, 70 AD, that Titus, some call him the emperor, but more or less he was a general for the Roman Empire. And it was at that particular time that Jesus actually prophesied to the outcome of the Jews' anti-Christ action towards the early Christian church. And of course, what happened is, we know from historical aspects that this group was demonized, and it ceased from continuing its culture. Now, we can fairly say that Christ originally did approach the Pharisees, and he did condemn them for missing the very purpose of the Son of God coming to the earth. And they had rejected the Son of God. We find in, I believe it's Mark chapter 1, there are various chapters that describe the actions of Herod. And as soon as Herod found out that a king was to be born, he immediately set out to destroy the firstborn. That is a historical document. We cannot deny that. That is actually written in the ledgers of the early Roman account, historical account. So there was this continual disregard for the spirituality of the true spiritual Israel, and it is what led them to, or rather, it is what led to their demise, not only in 70 AD, but right down through the various pages of history, which even today seem to show its ugly face. So, with further ado, we can add that the early Hebrews, or rather those that were killed in the besieging of Jerusalem, were dispensed in either into Africa or into the Turkish region. So that is where a particular Jewish race, which Jesus referred to, ended up going after 70 AD. But we want to discuss the true Hebrew culture, because Abraham, who was called from the Chaldees, Abraham was the father of the, I'm not going to call them Jewish, they were Hebrew. They were the Hebrew bloodline. And this is what we want to differentiate between. We want to differentiate between the Jewish bloodline and the Hebrew bloodline. Both are not the same. They are distinct. And of course, as we know, the history that Abraham was called by God to leave Chaldees and make his journey into the land of Canaan. And from there, God promised that he would make the nation of Israel, the true nation of Israel. This is not the false Israel, the fake Israel. This is the true spiritual, historic Israel that I'm referring to here. And of course, God provided miraculously for this man, and he was honored. He was made rich by the various settlers. He was made rich by the very accomplices of the people whom he joined and whom they joined. So Abraham was never ever wanting to separate himself from humanity, which is very strange to the fake Jewish race, which wants to separate its bloodline from separate its bloodline as a distinct race from every other race. So we can see the map here where Abraham made his journey. He made his journey from the Chaldees, and it was through those journeys that he came across Melchizedek. And Melchizedek was the high priest whom gave, what should I say? He gave ambassador. He considered Abraham an ambassador for the God of heaven. And so we find that this journey took place in the Middle East. And the journey was it originated in Assyria, or rather on the border of Assyria, and the journey ended up traveling through Mesopotamia, down through into Syria, which is the original Syria. Not the Syria that we see today, of course, because obviously over a period of time, these lands have changed in perspective to declining and to declining empires. Yeah. Okay, so here we have the founding of the nations, and we can see the two distinct bloodlines, that is the bloodline of Abraham and the bloodline of Esau. Okay, so these are the two distinct nations, that the Jews and the Hebrews. Abraham was a man of faith. He was told by God that his bloodline would receive a inheritor, that he would give birth to a son that would continue the bloodline of the early Hebrew patriarchs. And here we can see a picture of his wife Sarah urging Abraham to take a concubine, which was of a different bloodline. Of course, it was the Esau bloodline. And of course, what we know is that eventually Abraham, or rather eventually Sarah, gave birth to Isaac, and he was, and from the bloodline of Isaac is what grew the actual Hebrew culture, the original, pure, true Hebrew culture. And yeah, so here we can see, once again, we can see a picture here of the children that Abraham gave birth to, or rather on whom he sired. There were two distinct races, and eventually, of course, that timeline, that blood timeline, grew into the original Hebrew culture, which carried the Ark of the Covenant. Now, you'll find many Jews today who will try and convince us that they are actually part of the bloodline that partook of the sanctuary service. But without a doubt, we know that they didn't. We know that they were distinct. They were a distinct culture. Of course, they were allowed to participate in the sanctuary services. And here you can see a picture of the holy place and the most holy place. And you can see that this was a tent that the Israelites were to carry through the wilderness, and they carried that place of worship on their journey all the way through into Canaan. And of course, we must not forget the story before the setting out of the journey. We must not forget the setting of the journey prior to the Ark of the Covenant and the early Hebrew patriarchs. Here is a picture of the black class of slaves that were imported from Africa to fulfill the absence of the original Hebrew patriarchs. So you remember the story. You remember the Ten Commandment movie. We know that for their disobedience, Israel was taken into captivity by Pharaoh, and through a series of events and miracles, after 70 years of hearing the discouragement of the Hebrews and the disparaging, God miraculously released those people. And here we see a written mule on the Egyptian artifacts, on the Egyptian temples that were built in the pyramid as a pyramid. We can see the black class of people. So here is another form of apostasy, or rather heretical doctrine, where they believe that the original Hebrews were black. Well, they weren't black, yeah. But the slaves that were imported from Africa to take the place of the original Hebrew captives, yes, they were black, and this is what the actual mules refer to. Okay, so eventually we can lead our story down to Daniel the prophet, where he was part of the children of Israel. He was part of the royal priesthood. He was part of the royal court of Israel, Jerusalem, and this is basically at the time when Nebuchadnezzar took Israel, took Jerusalem, besieged Jerusalem, and took the children of Israel captive once again. So there are various points in history where Israel was consistently being taken into captivity for their sin. And this is a picture of Daniel the prophet, who was thrown into a lion's den for his resistance of bowing to a false god. The false priesthood or the pagan priesthood of Nebuchadnezzar's government ordered the entire kingdom to worship the pagan deity. But this is a story where those few Hebrews stood, did not stand and bow down to the pagan ideologies of Nebuchadnezzar, of King Nebuchadnezzar. And of course, the story, as we venture on and identify the story, we know that Daniel was placed into a lion's den for his faithfulness, and the story ended up with him being completely protected by a supernatural force. And the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom of Babylon, were convinced of the distinct God that these Hebrews worshipped. Okay, so we can see here that it's clear that there is a group of people that are purporting to be biblical original Jews, but in reality they're not. Yeah. So we've just basically gone through that. But there are two, as I've already mentioned, those two main branches of Jews are, number one, the Edomites, which is taken from Jacob's twin brother, which is the Semitic group of people who stole Israel's identity as prophesied in the Bible. And there are the Ascendicazi Jews, or the Khazars, which are the group of Europeans who were converted to Judaism. Okay, so remember that, yeah? The Jews are those who were converted to the original Hebrew. They are not the original Hebrew bloodline. They were converted to the Hebrew bloodline. And unfortunately, that bloodline kept its pagan ideologies, while the original Hebrew culture held on to the Ark of the Covenant. And okay, so if it's not us, then who? The curses: Deuteronomy 28:15-68, Leviticus 26:14-30 and 14:39. Please look at that. Please look at the black culture that were that are considered. Yeah, they are considered to be the original Hebrews, but as already established, they are not. Okay, that's it, guys. Thanks for your time. Put your comments down there if you want to comment. Take care. Bye.